Boss podcast, where musicians go to talk about artistry and industry. My name's Adam Meckler, and it's my mission to get you the tools to have a thriving career in music. And to that end, we've got an app called Gig Boss that is an organizational tool for freelance musicians and band leaders. You can create groups, you can create events, you can track the details of the events, you can click on each other's names and phone numbers and emails and contact each other. You can click on an address and you can pull up Uber or Lyft. Yeah, you can tell I'm getting sick of talking about this every single week, but we've put so much time and love and energy into this thing, and I'd appreciate you checking it out, downloading it. It's totally free on iOS and Android. It's really useful. It's getting better and better, and we're adding more stuff. Today, we're talking about how to repurpose your music to get more mileage out of it. This is something I've been doing a lot lately, and I've got my little list here, and I'll pull it up and just kind of talk through these points. So repurposing your music, that can be interpreted in some different ways. So the first way that I'm interpreting it is to strip off the top layers of old songs or beats and send them to collaborators and add new top layers and then share royalties. So this is something that I've been doing with a buddy of mine out in LA, Jason Fabus, who was on the show, the very first episode. He was the very first episode on the Gig Boss podcast, talking about how he is now making enough money to pay his rent in LA through passive income, made through kind of using Spotify as his whole social media network, essentially. And he's got a lot of really great advice and interesting ways that he does things, and we've been collaborating on some stuff. He just sent me another couple beats where he stripped off the top layers and sent them to me and said, add some horns, let's put these up as singles. So we're doing that. The benefit for me is that, like, when he sends me a track with nothing on it, I don't have to make a whole bed. I don't have to write new music. It's like I just get sent a track. I have something there that has an existing chord progression, and then I can take out my horn, screw around, improvise, and then start to record various different layers and just kind of see what happens. So from a creative process, it's really fun and interesting, and also from a time commitment standpoint, it's much less time commitment for me because I don't have to create the thing from scratch, right? And the first single we did this with was called Ghosted. It was previously released as a different song by Jason called Ghosted. I think it was the same name, but it had different top line stuff on it. So he kind of stripped it down and then sent it to me, and I recorded 3 flugelhorn parts over it. And that song now, I haven't looked and my phone's recording me, but that song now I think has over 15,000 streams on Spotify. It was placed on a few different Spotify playlists. So it's kind of because it's a beat, it's like you can say like, hey, this is lo-fi or whatever, and there's all these different playlists that do that, and editorial people like that kind of stuff. And so that helped, I think, get it placed, and Jason has been grinding super hard, so we released it together. We released it where we made both of us primary artists, so both of us were able to pitch it in the song pitching process. When you pitch your song to playlists on Spotify, both of us were able to pitch it. And on DistroKid, you do that by literally putting an and. When you enter the artist name, you put Adam Meckler and JFab, and then it finds both of them. It's kind of weird how it works on DistroKid, because DistroKid you pay by the number of bands that you are uploading to Spotify, and for me, I have like tons and tons of bands, and so that's not a great model for me, so I think I'm going to switch over to using CD Baby. But I did that this way, and that's kind of how I learned that they count that as another band, me and Jason together. But it shows up under Jason's name. It shows up under my name. We can both pitch it. There's a higher percentage likelihood then of it getting placed on playlists. And of course, we can't ignore the fact that Jason has been grinding in that scene for a really long time. And so that, I think, helped him, or that helped me. Like, his work leading up to this track helped us get this track placed. So I think Spotify sees those things. I know that they're looking at the trends and looking at what your past tracks have done. And one of the things that Jason continues to text me and give me advice, and he said, hey man, when your song gets placed on a playlist, make sure you post about it on social media, but also when you pitch your next song, make sure you say what song got placed and on what editorial playlist, so they know that you're already kind of in the system, you're in the algorithm, you've been placed before. One of my songs from my Forward album was placed on a playlist that came out before Ghosted, so I did have one song that had been placed, and I think it's got like 5,000 some streams, so it wasn't on a huge playlist, but it was on All New Jazz and something else, one of the other jazz playlists that are editorial playlists on Spotify. So that's number one. that's a nice way to repurpose music, is to take it and make it into something a little bit different. Take something that has the structure there already and make it into something different and re-release it. The second way is to reuse chord progressions. I do this a lot. So as a composer, sometimes it can be difficult to get your mojo going. Sometimes it can be difficult to get things going. And one thing that you can do is you can just reuse an old chord progression. You can change the beat that goes underneath it. You can change the harmonic rhythm, meaning the frequency with which the chords sound, and you can turn that into a new song. So an example of that is the bumper music on this podcast is called Sunshine Is Out, which is another single that I released under my name. It was the first single I released under my name. So I couldn't pitch it to playlists. I didn't know that at the time, but well, I'm learning as I go, baby. And I use that same chord progression in the song Toulouse, which is on my Live in Minneapolis album, my Adam Meckler Orchestra Live in Minneapolis album that features Toki Wright, the great hip-hop artist from Boston, who's going to be collaborating with me coming up on my next record again. And I used that same progression in both of those songs, and they're quite different. One's a big band song, and one's a song that's like got lyrics and singing and layers and different musicians and a totally different approach and a totally different sonic landscape than Toulouse, the big band piece. But I'm always thinking that way, like, can I repurpose this set of chords and that kind of stuff? So I'm gonna turn off my Facebook. I'm getting notifications because people are messaging me, which is awesome. Thank you for messaging me. I just sent out a thing that was like, hey, if you want to try to use Gig Boss app for 3 to 6 months, I'll send you a t-shirt, and just let me know what you think is good about it and what you think isn't good about it and what you think could be better. And those of you who have been emailing me some feedback, I appreciate that very much. I've been reading it. Even if I haven't responded yet, I will. But I have been reading your emails and filing those things away. So keep it on. Reuse chord progressions. It's a great way to repurpose music that you've already written. Put music on streaming that isn't there yet. So for me, I have all these albums I released in like 2009, 2010, 11, 12 that aren't on streaming, that never were. They were never really released other than me playing shows and selling CDs at my shows. I did never hire a publicist. They didn't get released on a record label. So I can kind of just be like, these are new, and post them. And that's technically not correct. And if with Spotify, if you say this track was released in 2013 or whatever, when you upload it to DistroKid or CD Baby or wherever you upload, it'll just release the track whenever. It's you cannot pitch it to playlists. And the real value of doing Spotify at all, in my mind, is being able to pitch a song to a playlist, because I've seen my listenership grow and hold pretty consistent over 2,000 listeners a month. Even though I've been over that, I've been over 8,000, 9,000 listeners in a month, some months when a song is on a playlist. But 2,000 or so of those people have continued to listen to my music. And that's really exciting. That's really exciting and interesting and different than the way the music industry was. And I think that is valuable. And as much as we like to turn our nose up to Spotify as artists sometimes, there's a pretty cool little game that you can play to try and get more listeners and maybe eventually turn those listeners into people who pay to come hear your music. So what I've been doing is just saying, yeah, I just released this. I just did this with Lulu's Playground. So I just released a single with Lulu's Playground, which was my band for a long time, trumpet, accordion, cello, and guitar. And we released a few albums, and we just independently released them, and they never went up on streaming. So one song we had never really released at all. So what I did was I took that song first, and I put that up and I pitched it. I put up a quote unquote throwaway single, which is a song that you have to upload first in order to claim your profile on Spotify. So if you haven't claimed your profile on Spotify yet, or if you don't have any music up yet, you have to put something up in order to claim your profile. You cannot pitch it to playlists until you have a profile that you've claimed, and you cannot claim your profile until you've released some music. Got that? So I put up a little throwaway single and then claimed the profile, added in some information so Spotify knows what Lulu's Playground is and sort of where Lulu's Playground lives, which is in this like cafe accordion orchestra, French cafe, movie we did a whole album called Sideshow Suite, where we did these 1-minute compositions to paintings of sideshow characters from like circus sideshow characters. It's kind of like creepy figures. So the songs are a little spooky. So I'm going to release probably at some point, I'm working on this. I'm going to release every one of those tracks, since they were never released on a label or anything. I'm going to release every one of those tracks as if they are new, and I'm going to pitch each one as individual singles and just see if, like, can I catch some fire here with Lulu's Playground. That's a band that I'd love to get back together. Of course, many of you know I moved away from Minneapolis, where that band was based, and actually the cello player moved to Seattle before I moved. So we're spread out all over, but we've been talking about maybe somehow getting back together. There've been a couple opportunities that have come up, like a festival or a grant opportunity or something like that. So my wheels are spinning there, and I'd really like to keep that thing going because I really love that band and the vibe of that band. And so I'm trying to be intentional about creating some kind of presence. And one way that I'm doing that is I'm putting music on streaming that isn't there yet, that I have in my library. It's already there. It's stuff that's already in my library. So theoretically, and this is what I think I'll plan to do, theoretically you can just line up a whole bunch of singles in a row so that they release every 3 weeks and put them all in at once. You could do it all in one sitting and then put the dates on your calendar, and then you know when the next one releases, you can pitch the next one, and so on and so forth. But you can only pitch one song at a time, so you have to wait till one releases before you can pitch the next one. All right? Put music on streaming that isn't there. Now, the next one, number 4, is upload tracks to licensing databases. And this is a big one. This is one that I talked with Graham Barton about on the podcast. And a lot of artists, like, he'll help artists take music that they're releasing as an artist and sort of prepare it for sync licensing. So one of the ways that you do that is you make sure that the sync licensing company gets all of the stems for the song. So all of the individual parts for the song that make up the single MP3 or WAV file, all those individual stems also get uploaded, in addition to a version with no vocals or a version with no top line, main vocal or top line, and a full version, and maybe a couple small versions where you highlight certain parts of the song that are interesting or impactful. Okay, so having that all in one place and only submit one song at a time. So if, like, you have a song that you really like that you think would really work for sync licensing, prepare it in that way. Contact the licensing database, ask what their submission process is like, or find their submission process on their website and submit it and see what happens. And that's a way that you can make money on your song, even if you only have, a few hundred streams on your song on Spotify. For many artists, that's the reality. That's the reality. It's like you're making great music, but you're having trouble getting people to hear it. And so that's where, like, playlist pitching is big, and getting your music into sync licensing databases is big. And those sync licensing gigs can really pay a large amount of money. I mean, it can really be a game changer for any artist. So it's I don't know. It's becoming a little saturated maybe, but the people that I talk to that are, like, young people into sync licensing, they're extremely optimistic about it. I think there's more media happening now than ever. So maybe you're not landing like the next Spider-Man film, but you're landing a Netflix show or a Paramount Plus show or a Prime show, like, everybody's making shows now, right? And there's budget because people are watching it. People are staying home and watching, which is one of the sad and hard parts of being a musician. Home entertainment is just so good. All right, so licensing databases, check out the Graham Barton episode on the podcast if you want to know more about that. Upload sheet music to your website. Cold email schools and band directors to purchase your sheet music. Include nice emails and graphics and listening links. Learn to speak the language of schools. So call your chart a level 1 chart, a level 2 chart. Does it have doubles? Do you have alternate instrumentation? So if it's for middle school, can you also write it for, like, if it's for jazz band, can you also write parts for flute and for clarinet, even though they don't typically go in jazz band? Maybe include a music -1 recording so that somebody can solo along with your song and practice soloing along with your song. that's a great avenue for making extra money as a musician, especially if you make horn-based music or you make music that is sort of composed in the traditional sense. If you make music for jazz or band or jazz combo, or you make music for concert band, or you compose music for a symphony or whatever, take that music and reach out directly to band directors, and you can find their emails on school websites. It's going to take some legwork. It's going to take some time, but this is something that's like every morning you could do it for an hour. Just set an alarm and go, or set a timer and go for an hour. I'm going to look up band directors. I'm going to email them, and then I'm going to create a Google spreadsheet and keep track of everybody that I've emailed and when I emailed them. All right? That's the kind of work it takes. That's basically what I do when I book a tour, too. I mean, it's the same idea. And what I'm doing now with Gig Boss app, trying to get people to try it and use it and give me feedback, I'm just emailing a couple people every day. I'm setting a little timer going, I'm only going to spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I'm going to email a couple people every morning and just be like, hey, long time. Do you want to try this app that I've been working on? All right. And it's same idea. So email band director, tell them who you are and what you do and why your music is interesting and different and valuable or whatever. And just see, there's budget at schools. You know, there's not only budget to purchase music, so you can have, and you want to have a store where they can buy the music too. The thing with schools is that you have to have a store where they can use a credit card, because the problem is that they can't use PayPal buttons. It's kind of a problem. I did PayPal buttons on my website for a really long time, and I switched to purchasing the store at Wix, which is like $300 some a year, and it's not cheap. But I have sold thousands of dollars of sheet music. So it has made up for the $300 some a year, $324 I think it is, that I have to pay to be able to have a store where people can put something in their cart. For me, it's a zip file. I create a zip file of my big band tune and a recording, and sometimes the .muse file, if the band director needs to make adjustments or whatever, they can have the finale file. And I just give a disclaimer like, please don't share this stuff. And they print, so they get PDFs and they can print their own copies. It is dangerous because people share music, and I've noticed a couple schools have been playing my music, so people send me texts like, hey, your song is on the program for, UW Stevens Point, the university in Stevens Point just played my tune Magnificent Madness on their concert. And I could be wrong, but I don't remember them purchasing it from my website. So then it's like, oh, how'd they get it? And that's part of the downside of doing PDFs with your stuff. But I just purchased a Maria Schneider piece. Maria is really a leader in all of this stuff for people who do non-standard music, non-popular music. She's really a leader, and she talks about, when you download one of her pieces, there's like a sheet, a README file that's like, hey, this is how I make my living. Please don't share this with anybody that didn't purchase it, yada, yada. So you can do that as well to kind of protect yourself, but make sure you have a website, a place where the schools can purchase your music, use a credit card to purchase your music, download a zip file, whatever. That's a great avenue for especially if you have a band like, I don't know, like I play in Youngblood Brass Band. Youngblood Brass Band sells boatloads of sheet music. Boatloads every year. Many thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars in sheet music. It's a huge thing. So if you have a band that's impactful, that's making some, there's some brass bands like in Minneapolis where I was for 10 years. There's this brass band, McNasty Brass Band, and they were on Shark Tank. They were on Shark Tank because there was an earplugs company that wanted to demonstrate how great their earplugs are. And McNasty Brass Band plays very loud, so part of it was like, come in and play super loud while the celebrity judges all wear our earplugs. You can piggyback on that kind of exposure and sell your sheet music to schools or to students or to young bands who want to learn your music because they saw you on a TV show or they listened to your song or they heard you at a show or whatever. That's a huge avenue for making money that I think is largely untapped by bands that are climbing in popularity. All right. That's number 5. Number 6, do you have long-form videos? How about making 1 million little clips that are a minute or less of the most impactful parts of your songs and post them that way, or post using your song as a sound and line it up with the video? Okay, so this is interesting. So you can choose a sound which is your song because you can I did this recently. I make thimbleberry jam every year. Thimbleberries are unique to the Upper Peninsula. I shouldn't say that. Somebody just posted a photo of a thimbleberry leaf on the West Coast. So I didn't, or like in Oregon or something. I didn't realize that they were there. I had never seen them before moving here. It's a berry. It's like a raspberry, but it's a bit more tart. And I make jam out of it every year because we have tons of thimbleberry bushes in our yard. It's kind of like gold. The jam is very expensive up here, and I don't sell it, but it's very good, and I could. But I don't. It's going to be like another side hustle for Meckler. I don't think I could do that. So I made a video of me. I made a reel on Instagram of me playing, of me making this jam. So I said, like, picking the thimbleberries, mashing them up, boiling them, adding sugar, adding, the thickening agent, pectin, adding whatever, and then canning them up. And then I, have a final shot of all the jars, and a final shot of Augie, no, it was Hobbs, I think, tasting it and then giving a big thumbs up. Okay, and behind that video was my song Sunshine Is Out, which is the bumper music on this. And my understanding is that every time that song is listened to in the reel, it counts as a stream, okay? And so there's that. And 20,000 some people saw that reel. It was my most viewed reel, much to my chagrin. It's like I post all this trumpet content, all this music content, of course, podcast content now, which is I'm probably confusing the algorithm. If we're going to be serious about like sending the right message to the algorithm so that it knows what audience to put your stuff in front of, I'm probably confusing the algorithm by doing too many things. But I did this reel and it got 20,000 views, and so 20,000 people heard my song. And I don't know, man. Did 10 or 20 people go to Spotify and find that song because they liked it? Maybe. But it's gotten a lot more streams because of that, because of being heard in that one reel that got 20,000 some views. All right, so that's a way you can use your song as a sound, and you don't even have to pair it to like a studio video or to you singing along or whatever. Now, there are other ways to do this too, because with Instagram and Facebook, if you post lots and lots of content over and over and over again, they're just basically going to suppress your content. They're going to assume that you're spamming people. But TikTok is different. TikTok actually tries to find an audience for every single video you make, no matter how frequently you post. So you could take a new song that you've made, and you could use that as a sound, and you could try doing all kinds of different videos that aren't related to the song, or that are you singing along to the song in different locations, or on the screen, you can write, that moment when you see your ex with his new girlfriend in the car next to you or whatever, and you can be singing your song with that title on the screen. And then, TikTok uses the words on the screen to try and find an audience as well. So there's lots of really interesting and cool ways that you can try and get your music heard by chopping up a long form video into small chunks and posting it as small chunks. So I've kind of mentioned all the ways that you can use your song as a sound, but you can also chop that video up, use the most impactful moments. You can either pair it as a sound. You're going to deal with copyright issues if you don't. If you use original sound, you're going to deal with copyright issues if your channels aren't cleared with your distributor, which is difficult. That's a huge pain in the butt, actually. I've dealt with that a lot. So it's might be easier for you to find your song as a sound and then line up the audio as a sound with the studio audio, which I actually haven't even tried, so I don't know if that's easy or not. It's probably not easy, but I know that you can slide around on the song and find the clip that you want. So theoretically, you can do that. And try to find the most impactful visual elements of each song, or just like you can, like I said, like you could chop up a whole bunch of them and just see which one hits, and use different text on the screen if you want. I did this recently with one of my songs from my Forward album. I posted a reel on Instagram that was like, when the cameraman can't find the person who's soloing. And it was a drum solo. It was like this big drum solo, and the cameraman just kept zooming in on the horns that were playing this little doo-day, doo-day, this really like simple doo-day, you know. And the drummer's going like brr, 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 doing all this crazy stuff, and we're just going doo-day, and they're just like zoomed in on the horns. And that was funny, and some people saw it. I think it got a decent amount of views. So it's like you could do stuff like that too, where you're taking like a situational thing and you're kind of making light of it. Lots of ways to take a video, like a long form video they made, and turn it into bits of content that you can use in short form content land. All right, that's Reels, that's Shorts on YouTube, that's TikTok. Everybody's kind of going that direction, short form video content. And it's cool. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that. Also, like, not everybody is meant to do that, so don't do it if it doesn't speak to you. Try one of these other ways. All right? Post multiple videos of yourself doing things with your song as a sound. Yep, the plays counts as a stream. We already talked about this. Users might go and listen on Spotify. You might start a trend on TikTok, which would be huge. When one of your songs starts a trend, like Ari Herstand talked about this on his episode, How to Make It in the New Music Business, on this podcast. It's a great episode. Check that one out. Ari's kind of a mover and shaker. TikTok does not suppress videos in the same way that Facebook and Instagram do. I mentioned that. All right, so here, say who your video is for in the text of the video. So that's one thing that, and it doesn't matter how old your song is either. That's the crazy thing about this new land of music listening. It's like new music doesn't matter if it's new or not, right? Like, we know, like, Stranger Things used a Kate Bush song, and now it's like number 1 on the Billboard charts, and it was from the 1980s. So the whole landscape of like how a song makes it onto the Billboard charts, totally new now, totally different than it was 10, 15 years ago. So it could be an old song, but saying who your video is for actually helps TikTok find the audience. And so you might say like, musicians, here's a reason why you should print CDs, and then talk about why you should still print CDs, even though cars don't even have CD players, or whatever. There's lots of different things that you can do, but name the audience. Ladies, blah, 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 blah. Men, don't you think, blah, 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 blah. You could do that kind of thing to try and attract a larger audience on TikTok. Okay, second to last, change the personnel of your band. Woo, that's a heavy one. That one can be difficult if you are a band leader and you've had the same band for a really long time. That can be hard, but I can say from experience that changing the personnel of your band, it reignites your interest in the thing as the band leader. It gives you more motivation to write new music. Sometimes you'll find that the thing that you've been hearing in your head all along that wasn't really happening in your band was because even though your band was amazing, incredible musicians, it just wasn't the right fit musically in terms of what you're trying to get out of the music. And when I changed personnel, this is tough because some of my friends who played in those bands may be listening to this, and I just want to say I love you guys and loved playing with you every single time. But what I have found is that with new personnel, my music has really blossomed. That's it. And then out of that, I mean, like, you could build loads out of that, right? Last one. This isn't really one. Use your music as bumper music for your new podcast. And that's what I did. I used Sunshine Is Out as bumper music for my new podcast as a way to repurpose music that I have already made. There are lots of other things you could do too. You can find content creators who need music for their videos. I've sent music to people who do outdoor kind of stuff. I've sent music to like a dude who does all these, he does like tons of, I mean, he does all these like, what do you call them? Motocross, X-bike, I don't know. Like biking stuff, jumping through stuff, mountain biking, that kind of stuff. And he's used a bunch of my songs in his videos. And sometimes he's like, "Could I just use this?" And I'm like, "Sure, here." And other times, you know, I'll get some money for that. But that's a way to repurpose as well. All right, that's it for today. How to repurpose your music so that you can maximize gains and stay inspired and help you keep going. These are all really important things. So I appreciate you listening very much. Please, wherever you're listening, just hit like, hit subscribe, rate it 5 stars. Tell a friend about Gig Boss Podcast. Tell a friend. If you like the podcast and you think I give valuable information, I'm telling you everything that I've learned over 10, 15 years of being a professional in the industry. I'm continuing to learn and just relaying that stuff to you all. Tell a friend that you think it's a great podcast. That would be super helpful for me. I appreciate it very much. We've got a Gig Boss Podcast Facebook page where we discuss some of the stuff that you can find if you just go to Gig. There is a link, but sometimes that's a pain in the butt. So you can just go to Facebook, search Gig Boss Podcast, and you'll see it. Our app, Gig Boss, is available on iOS and Android. We still have a deal with Ari's Take Academy where you can take one of his courses on like how to run ads if you're a musician on Facebook, Instagram, or they have a sync licensing class. And they're expensive classes, but they're really awesome. They're taught by leaders in the industry. They're fantastic classes. If you enter Gig Boss when you check out, GIGBOSS, you get 10% off whatever course you decide to purchase. And that's it. Is that it? I think that's it. Oh, I have a new Spotify playlist of all the artists who've been interviewed on the podcast. So about half the time, or more than half the time, I do interviews. It's going to become, I think, about half and half. But I do interviews with musicians, artists, industry professionals, and we talk about the industry, we talk about artistry, we talk about all kinds of stuff. I've made a playlist on Spotify that has music from all the artists that have come on the show, and it's fantastic. It's called The Gig Bosses. There's a link in the description to see that. It's a Spotify playlist, so if you use Spotify, that's where it is. And that's it. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Very much appreciate you. See you on the flip side.